The Samsung Galaxy S5, the return of the king, my friends. This is going to be an honest review of my look at this device over the past couple weeks. If you're a fan of my reviews, you know that I don't pull any punches. You know that I enjoy lots of different pieces of hardware, lots of software. In fact, I tend to work with and use all aspects of mobile devices. And so what this review will show you are the pros, the cons, my likes, my dislikes, everything about this phone that you'll need to know if you're considering purchasing it. So stay tuned for this honest look at the new Samsung Galaxy S5. All right, so we're going to take a look at the hardware first on this guy. This is a 5.1-inch display. It is a full 1080p resolution, high definition, you know, lots and lots of pixels. I'm not going to talk about specs. Again, if you follow my reviews, I'm not going to mention specs in terms of how they make the phone better or worse, because specs don't matter. It's all about how the phone looks, feels, and operates in your hand. It's all about the way the device responds and that sort of bond between the user and the device via the hardware and the interface and the software. So getting away from my little spiel there about specs, what do I like about this phone in terms of the design? Well, Samsung has changed the back of their phones for once. It's still flimsy plastic, okay, but it does have some texture to it. It does have a little bit of a grip to it. Feels really, really nice in your hands. The phone has a tremendously different feel from the S4 and the S3. They've made it a little bit more square. The S4 was a little bit more roundy. The S3 was very round. And so, you know, to be honest, this reminds me a little bit of the Galaxy Note, the original Galaxy Note, and it's almost as big as the original Galaxy Note, which, you know, to go off on a little tangent, I actually don't like that. I don't like that they've made this phone bigger. I don't like the fact that they've kept the same pixel count, and yet it's still a bigger phone. It keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it makes it harder and harder to reach everything with your hands, right? I mean, granted, the phone is very thin and does have a nice feel to it, and so it does fit in your hand rather nicely. I don't like this trend of bigger phones. I prefer smaller phones, maybe a 4.7-inch screen like the Motorola Moto X, or something that's a little bit more manageable, like the HTC One, for example, which is a 5-inch display, but the cut of the phone is a little bit more narrow. So getting away from the negatives of the build, you know, Samsung has decided to keep this plastic diner table crappy, cheap-looking ring around the phone, which I'm not a fan of. I think that, you know, this, as much as I like the design of the phone, I don't like this fake chrome that's plastic. I think, you know, they could add a little bit of design, you know, take some cues from Apple or HTC with how to build a phone that looks premium and feels premium. This phone definitely does feel cheaper than the HTC One or the iPhone 5S. It has improved, I think, tremendously in terms of its overall look, feel, and sort of impression when you hold on to it over the S3 and the S4, but it still has an air of sort of cheapness to it. Samsung has decided to up the camera in the back to 16 megapixels. They've included a single LED flash, which is different than some of the other makers like the iPhone or the HTC One, which have a dual LED flash. There is a heart rate monitor back here, which is sort of cool, so you can put your finger on it and it'll give you your pulse if you're into exercise or the S Health applications on the phone. And I think there actually might be a secondary lens in here to help with the blurred focus. I'm not 100% certain of that, but anyway, that's what's in this little cutout here on the back. Speaker grill down here, as usual, per I think every Galaxy that's been ever made. Everything else is the same. You've got an IR lens, you have a headphone jack up here, you have a sealed USB component, or excuse me, USB 3 port right here, and this works with standard micro USB. You can do standard micro USB there or USB 3 for the connection, for the whole connection, and so both types of cables will work. The phone is waterproof and water sealed. Or water resistant. I mean, there is a spec to it. It is rated for a certain amount of submersion for a certain amount of time, but you can see that the waterproofing is mostly just this gasket here. So, you know, the phone definitely has to be snapped in tight, or the back of the phone has to be snapped on tight in order for the waterproofing to work. Micro SD card slot here, micro SIM as well, not nano SIM. I know a lot of the phones are going to nano SIM. The new HTC One is a nano SIM, and the iPhone 5S is a nano SIM, but that's a micro SIM there. Again, same sort of cheap plastic back as that Samsung is famous for, but definitely different texture here than normal. So getting into the screen, well, like I said, they've made the screen a little bit bigger, 5.1 inches, but they've kept the number of pixels, and it is fantastic. It's just a beautiful display. If you've ever used a Samsung Galaxy device before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The screen is sharp, it's bright, it's colorful, it's saturated. It's almost cartoony in a way that it's so bright and beautiful and colorful that things just jump out at you. The screen is by far the best part of this phone. I mean, it is just a joy to look at and a joy to use. Personally, I like some of the less saturated screens like the Nexus 5 or the HTC One or the iPhone 5S. But I think if you're a fan of the AMOLED display and you just like really saturated, really dark blacks, really, really nice colors, you're going to love the display on the new Galaxy S5. Other parts of the phone hardware that they've changed, the button layout is actually different. You have a back button and a recent apps button, which used to be a back button and a menu button, but now we still have the home button. The home button has a fingerprint sensor in it, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But as far as the button layout goes, an interesting thing to think about with this is that as Android is changing and as Android evolves in terms of its software updates, we now no longer have a need for a menu button. And so Samsung is kind of stuck here. They have ingrained in people's memories, if you're a Galaxy fan, the button layout being back, home, and menu. And now that it's different, now that we have a recent apps button here and no menu button, this actual layout is different than almost every other on-screen Android phone that's out there right now. For example, the HTC One or the Nexus 5, which has total soft buttons that are built into the screen display. They're not hardware buttons or on-screen menus. The order is actually opposite. It is a back button here and a menu button, or excuse me, back button and recent apps button here. And so the fact that Samsung is sort of struggling with their layout of the button lends evidence to the fact that buttons are sort of an outgoing trend. I think that in the future we'll see devices that don't have any buttons on them, no menu button, no home button, totally on-screen display. All right, so we'll jump into the actual fingerprint scanner here. If you haven't already been aware, Samsung likes to copy people, and they're definitely like to copy Apple. And so they've copied Apple here again and decided to add a fingerprint scanner into the home button of their device. Unfortunately, it is a little bit inconsistent. To be honest, I think it works probably 90% of the time, which, for Touch ID is maybe the same in terms of its accuracy. The one downside to this is that you definitely need two hands to use it. That you have to swipe your finger completely over and straight over the home button. And so that's perfectly easy and works perfectly well when you have two hands, just like that. But when you don't have two hands, it is nearly impossible to hold this phone with one hand and swipe like this. I mean, you're going to drop the phone, or you're not going to be able to get your finger exactly straight on there. So anyway, it's very, very difficult to be able to use this phone with one hand while using that fingerprint sensor. As good as it is and as well as it works, you definitely need two hands to use it. Let's talk about software here for a little bit. I'm actually not a huge fan of TouchWiz. I was back in the day when it first came out. It was different. It was new. It was a clean skin on top of a sort of older style broken version of Android, back, and I'm talking in the days of like 2.3, 2.2, those days where Android really wasn't solidified yet. It really wasn't sort of spiffied up. TouchWiz added a nice sort of, just the skin was fun back then. But now when you have clean versions of Android with KitKat being so impressively smooth and fast and actually beautiful to look at with its icons and with its layout, TouchWiz has gotten old, and TouchWiz has gotten a lot of bad press. It's laggy, it's bloated, it just doesn't really work the way people want it to. They want phones that are fast and that are clean, and TouchWiz does not provide that at all. And so what Samsung has decided to do is they've actually cleaned up TouchWiz quite a bit. They've made the icons flat a la Apple with their sort of flat look here for the quick settings. There's still a lot of different things in here that most people have no idea what they're going to be used for and won't use them. There's actually a couple articles on the internet where it talks about how people don't use all these stupid features that Samsung decides to put in here. And so, this just lends confusion to most users. But the settings are there if you want them. The other thing that they've done is they've removed a lot of the sort of silly bloat. This is an icon pack, so this is going to look a little bit different on your Galaxy when you buy it, as far as the icons look and feel. But what I want to point out here is the bloat on this phone. This is an AT&T phone, and it's full of AT&T garbage. There's AT&T Family Map, there's AT&T Drive Mode, there's just all this stupid stuff that I'm sure Verizon will include as well. And there's a lot less Samsung bloat on this phone. Now, there's still definitely Samsung bloat bloat on here. Things like S Health, you know, S Wallet, or whatever this other secondary wallet program is called that I don't want. There are other S applications in here, you know, that I don't really want to use, like S Voice. You know, I want to use Google Now. I don't care about Samsung's S Voice. Why do we have two different things that do the same thing? And so the bloat on this phone sort of annoys me. I would prefer a clean look of Android, a sort of stock look and feel. And for me, you know, I would probably end up rooting this phone and installing a stock, very clean ASOP build of Android, something that's closer to vanilla KitKat, rather than have to use, or not have to use, but just have these Samsung apps on here. I don't really want to use these Samsung apps. I want to use my own apps that I put on. I don't want to have AT&T and Samsung shove their stupid software down my throat. So how about lag? Well, you know, this has got to be the fastest Galaxy S phone I've ever used yet. There are still, how do I want to put this? The phone doesn't feel laggy. You don't get stutters, you don't get frame drops, you don't get sort of that jittery, jaggery, you know, swipe across the home screen and you get little chunks, or like application animations or get chunky, things are sort of laggy. There is an air of slowness to the device. And what I mean by that is when you bring up the keyboard, it's a little bit slow. When you open and close apps, it's a little bit slow. There's just elements of speed that I think could be refined. You know, if you compare this to like a Nexus 5, the Nexus 5 would just blow it out of the water. And I'm not talking about Geekbench scores or, you know, some other stupid benchmark. I'm talking about picking the phone up in your hand and doing a task, going on the internet, doing a search, finding what you want, closing the app, making a call, all in sequence, right? I'm talking about using the phone. I don't care what your Geekbench score is. I don't care, you know, what other benchmarks say. And, you know, Samsung actually got in trouble for overinflating their benchmark scores anyway to impress all the stupid geeks out there that's all they care about is what's my quadrant score on my phone? No, it's about how the phone looks, feels, and operates in your hand. And so when you compare this to some of the other higher end phones, the iPhone 5S or the Nexus 5, you can definitely tell that there's a little bit of slowness in this phone. And I don't want to call it lag because it doesn't feel like lag. It just feels like it's being slow. You know, but like I said, it's definitely one of the faster Galaxy phones that I've used in the past. And I've used every variant of the Galaxy, from the Galaxy S1 all the way up to the S5. And I can honestly say that this phone has won me over with the sort of speed and utility of it in terms of its software. Jumping into the camera, you'll see that the front-facing camera on here is nice and big, nice and bright, nice wide-angle view. Samsung has changed the rear camera, like I said, to be 16 megapixels. They have also decided to reduce some of the stupid, useless camera features that no one used in here too. So they've taken out many of the options. You've got the beauty face, which is like a soft filter, shot and more, which kind of gives you these little action sequences, panorama, which is nice, virtual tour I haven't really played with, dual camera, where it'll take like a postage stamp picture on the front camera and then use the rear camera as the main device. And, you know, to be honest, I think that they've done a really good job with the quality of the camera for this phone. You know, this phone has become essentially a way to keep a portable camera in your pocket, one that is actually really, really useful, one that people really like, one that people, there you go, there's a waterproof test. Check out my other video for the waterproof part of this phone. But, you know, the results on this phone are they're just stunning. I mean, the quality is just fantastic. It is by far one of the nicer cameras I've used in a phone yet to date. And I think that in general, you know, people can carry this phone around in their pocket and really use it for, you know, to have a nice quality picture. I mean, you know, check my other videos for like an actual in-depth comparison between this and the HTC One. But this phone, as an all-around shooter, as an all-around camera in your pocket, works really, really well. And I'm really, really pleased with the results. What are my final thoughts on this phone? Well, this is going to be basically a way to compare this phone to the other top-of-the-line phones as of May 2014, but mostly just the iPhone and Android. You know, when you're deciding on what phone to buy, there's a lot of things you have to take into consideration. Cost probably not being one of them, because most people are going to buy on contract. And this is not going to be an argument about, you know, unlocked versus locked. I'm just going to use this as an upgrade, sort of talk about it in terms of an upgrade. The big contenders in the phone world right now are the Galaxy S5, the HTC One M8, probably the Moto X, but there's going to be a Moto X Plus 1 coming out, and of course the iPhone 5S. The thing that Samsung has going for it with the Galaxy S5, in my opinion, is the size, the weight and feel and fit in your hand, and the fact that this phone is waterproof. And, you know, I think that yes, there are flaws to this phone. I think, yes, it's just a little bit too big. I think that, yes, the plastic construction gets old. It doesn't feel as creaky as it usually does, but it definitely does have some creak factor into it. It's just not a solid device. It doesn't have that build quality like the iPhone or like the HTC One does. It feels cheap. I'm sorry, but that's just a matter of fact. But, you know, there's lots of things about this phone that sort of make that really a non-issue. Like I said, the screen, great screen, brilliant screen, awesome screen, lovely screen. I mean, throw any adjective you want at it. It's a nice display. Pleasant to look at, really, really nice display. Other things that are sort of cool about this phone are the fingerprint scanner. I mean, some people would say, yeah, I don't really care about that. But for me, it's nice. I don't have to enter a password. I know my phone is secure, and this works. It's fast. It's easy. It works reliably. I like using it. It's, you know, for me, this is a nice feature to have. The biggest feature, I think, for me is the waterproofness. You know, I can take this phone out with me when I go kayaking. I can take it out with me when I go for a run. I can take it out with me when I go on my paddleboard. I mean, I can do all of my outdoor activities with this phone, you know, or I can go to the sporting game and, you know, not worry about dropping it into the urinal, or I can throw it in my beer, or I can spill beer on it, or I can put it in the sink, or I can drop it in the toilet. I mean, there's so many reasons why having a waterproof phone that's not bulky and doesn't have a huge case on it is a great feature for everyday life. I mean, accidents happen, and this the seal around here and the fact that this phone is waterproof makes it so that you don't have to go through the trouble of getting it repaired or replaced, and saves people a lot of money. So for me, that's a huge selling feature. Yes, I think the software is slow. Yes, I think that it could be better with stock Android. Yes, I'm annoyed that people are saying that the bootloader is probably going to take a long time to be unlocked, or if it's not going to be unlocked at all, which would be a bummer. But, you know, this phone has taken me sort of away from my Nexus 5. It has pulled me back into the camp of Samsung, and I really like it. I really like how this phone fits, feels, and operates in my hand. I'm just a Samsung fan again. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do honest reviews of other devices. It doesn't mean I would drop this phone in a heartbeat for the Motorola Moto X Plus 1, which I think I may end up doing anyway. But in general, the hardware on this phone, the software, just the build quality, just, you know, it's a great phone. I think that if you're in the market for an Android phone and you don't care so much about design, so like if you're coming from the iPhone and you really like that sort of industrial design, you might want to look to an HTC One. If you don't really care about that and you want a solid phone that feels good, that runs smooth, that has some cool features in it, definitely check out the Samsung Galaxy S5. Hope you guys enjoyed this honest review. Don't forget to check out everything else I have on YouTube, and rate, comment, and subscribe.